New footage has surfaced that potentially shows Celeste Rivas Hernandez's perhaps final movements caught on tape before she vanished and was ultimately found dead in a car registered to singer David. This, along with new details about that car and how long it may have been abandoned, are giving us a better sense of a timeline as everyone searches for answers. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So as you know, we have been carefully following the Celeste Rivas Hernandez death, and we want to track what we seem to know about her and her movements, because that is key here. That is key. And this comes as TMZ has just released new surveillance footage apparently showing her right before she disappeared last year. And let me put it into context about why this is so significant. So her decomposed remains, the decomposed remains of this teenage girl, were found in the trunk of a 2023 Tesla at a spot called Hollywood Tow Yard, and this car was registered to singer David, D4vd, David Anthony Burke. In fact, she was found a day after she would have turned 15 years old. But the question is, and the mystery here, is what was going on before she ended up in that car, right? Her whereabouts before her remains were discovered in that car. That's the mystery. Well, it's at least a mystery to us. We're not sure what investigators really have at this point, what's happening behind the scenes. I will provide you a recent update from the LAPD captain, which is interesting. We'll talk about it. But they have been relatively tight-lipped. Not uncommon in an investigation like this. I mean, we don't even have an official cause of death. Authorities have not identified a suspect or person of interest. That includes David, too. He has not officially been implicated in any crime or any wrongdoing. I want to be clear about that. But when it comes to Celeste, the victim in this case, where was she? What was she doing? Well, it has been reported that Celeste had run away from home on prior occasions. Law enforcement sources reportedly told TMZ that it was due to a, quote, troubled home. Like there had been this reporting that she ran away in January of 2024, was taken back home after being found or located in Hollywood. However, speaking of TMZ, we got to talk about what they reported. So they got their hands on surveillance footage. It's video from a liquor store in Lake Elsinore, California. That's about 76 miles away from Hollywood, where Celeste's body was found. Now, this is footage reportedly from March 19th, 2024. So possibly the second time that she allegedly ran away. And her sister apparently went to this liquor store. It's called the Lago Spirits, which was reportedly near the family home, to try to see if they have surveillance tape capturing Celeste's movement, see where she went. In this video from TMZ, it appears to show a person wearing a black hoodie and white or light colored pants, a person believed to have been identified by the family as Celeste. And in the video, assuming it is her, you can see Celeste walking quite quickly down the street, then appear to jog or sprint a bit as she rounds the corner, and she eventually disappears from view. Now, we don't know exactly where she came from, or maybe more importantly, where she went. On TMZ Live, Harvey Levin and staff, they discussed whether it was possible she had gotten into a car that had seemingly stopped on the street. TMZ also apparently interviewed the liquor store owner, Ellie Nadeff, who described Celeste as a, quote, beautiful, quiet, shy girl, someone who would simply come into the store to buy ordinary items like chips and soda. And of course, the question was, how did she go from potentially being on that tape to ending up in the trunk of a car? Well, what I'm about to tell you is going to further this mystery. So previous reporting indicated that the Tesla that was apparently abandoned in the Hollywood Hills, it was there maybe just for a few days before it was towed, impounded, and sent to the tow yard, where, by the way, a worker smelled a foul odor coming from the car and called police, and then the body was discovered. Well, now we have more details. Neighbors reportedly told NBC Los Angeles that that car had been there for about a month. And as per reporting from LA Times, that Tesla, again, registered to David, was ticketed 11 days before Celeste was found inside. So it was parked on Bluebird Avenue. A resident apparently complained that it was parked there for so long. On August 27th, a parking enforcement officer marked the car. Then on September 3rd, the officer issued a citation for violating a 72-hour parking ordinance. August 5th, it was towed. September 8th is when the body is found. This is again reporting by the Los Angeles Times. So if we're thinking of Celeste's time of death, her cause of death, how long she may have been in that car for, particularly if we discuss decomposition, the timeline has now shifted. Now, you might think by watching Sidebar that you've, seen everything, you've seen it all. I will tell you, think again. 50 Ways to Catch a Killer. Okay, this brings you real cases where detectives had to flip the script to take down cold-blooded killers. Hosted by 50 Cent, this isn't your typical crime show. No, it is a high-stakes, twist-filled ride into the minds of investigators who think outside the badge to break the case. From unforgettable setups to shocking reveals, every episode proves when killers think they got away with murder, think again. Watch 50 Ways to Catch a Killer with 50 Cent exclusively on Fox Nation. By the way, according to News Nation, private investigator Steve Fisher explained that the initial complaint report, which he apparently reviewed, details how the Tesla had a dent, but there was no mention of a smell, and how it was essentially abandoned only 150 feet from a Hollywood Hills property that David had been renting. And we reported on a previous episode of Sidebar how David apparently broke the lease recently, moved his stuff out. And this came after police had searched the property, apparently confiscated electronics and computers. This was per a search warrant. But we are trying to track the movements of this victim, of this teenage girl, who, when found, reportedly weighed 71 pounds, had a tattoo on her finger that read, "Shh." This is according to the LA medical examiner. That was a distinguishing feature, by the way, that apparently helped to identify her. And TMZ reported that David has the same tattoo. As we mentioned in our previous episode of Sidebar, TMZ reported that people in the industry believed that 20-year-old David and Celeste were dating. Many believe she was actually 19 years old. She was in the 7th grade, by the way. And there have been questions more about this connection, right? There's questions about whether he mentioned this Celeste in a song. News Nation reports that there was a live stream of apparently both of them talking to David's fans that has recently circulated online. That there is a photo of seemingly the both of them, with those wondering if it was the same shirt he wore in that photo that he wore with Billie Eilish in October of 2023. This is from reporting by Complex. And speaking photos, by the way, TMZ also got a hold of a photo of seemingly David out in Lake Elsinore, so less than a mile from Celeste's home. And by the way, authorities haven't officially identified a connection between David and Celeste. As I said, they've been very tight-lipped. All we know is that they're continuing to investigate. It was reported earlier on that David had been cooperative with authorities. He has since canceled his Withered tour. He's delayed release of his album. But in an exclusive interview with People magazine, an LAPD commanding officer would not confirm whether David was cooperating with the investigation or not. Here's what he would say. So LAPD Captain Scott M. Williams told People, "We know for sure that Celeste Rivas Hernandez died and someone placed her body in the front trunk area of David Burke's Tesla. We know that the Tesla had been parked at the location from which it was towed for several weeks. So it is very likely Celeste Rivas Hernandez had been dead for several weeks prior to her body being discovered." The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has not determined a cause or manner of death, so we don't know for sure if anyone has any criminal culpability for her death beyond the concealment of her dead body. LAPD's robbery homicide unit is apparently still on the case. So the question is, with this video, these new details, this comment, what do they tell us about Celeste's movements leading up to her death? Let me bring on Matt Irvine, retired detective, law enforcement instructor. Thank you so much for taking the time. Why is that video significant from the liquor store?
Well, as you said, this video is apparently from March 19 of 2024. We know that Celeste went missing, reported missing the day before that. So the video is very important in terms of capturing a moment, apparently leading up to what we believe is her second disappearance from home. As you said, she is seen walking and then running towards someone or something off screen. The liquor store owner has stated that he believes she entered a vehicle. Now, that vehicle is not captured in this footage, but what this footage does is it gives investigators a date, time, and place to work from. So there may be other security footage that captured a license plate of the vehicle, might have captured face of the driver of the vehicle. It also just gives places to look for time and date in terms of communications that Celeste was having around March 19 of 2024. Who is she talking with? Who is she texting with? The substance of those texts is probably no longer available, but call detail records and text detail records would at least show us who she was communicating with around the time of this disappearance. So it may show us who was behind the wheel of that car, whose car that was, and who she was talking to before she went missing.
What did you mean by the content? We might not know the content of the messages anymore.
So typically, cell phone providers, they only retain the content of text messages for a very limited period of time, usually a matter of weeks or months. So we're now talking about a year and a half ago. Those text records, in terms of the details of what was said, are probably no longer available. But what should still be available from most cell phone providers is the persons or the phone numbers with which she was communicating.
I just want to go back to that video, and that's an interesting point. Just going back to that video, do you think investigators are looking at it, and what do they analyze in the video? Do they try to get a hold of any car that passed by Celeste, try to find out who they are, say, hey, did you see this girl? Do they analyze what her movements were? How do they even officially confirm that it is her? I believe her family identified that it was her. But what do they do with that short video? How do they analyze it, and what technology do they use?
So it's probably unlikely that anybody a year and a half later is going to have a specific recollection of seeing a car going by or a person going by, simply because it wouldn't have meant anything to them at the time. However, again, this security footage, while this camera doesn't capture the license plate or the vehicle or the face of the driver, it doesn't mean that there aren't other nearby security cameras, traffic cameras, automated license plate readers, other devices that did capture the vehicle and who was behind the wheel. In terms of figuring out whether this was Celeste, besides the family statement, which I think is very significant, Celeste, if she's like most adolescents in this day and age, has a cell phone. And while the specific geolocation data, again, is probably no longer available, the broad cell site info should be available from whoever her cell phone service provider was. And so you can place Celeste at that time and place captured on the video. And again, you could do the same with other people of interest in the case. Where do their cell phones and potentially even vehicles show us that they were on March 19th of 2024?
Right. What is the reported runaway attempts? How does that complicate the case? How does that affect the investigation? Talk to me about that.
Well, it looks like what we're hearing now is that Celeste left home on several occasions before finally disappearing for good, at least as far as her family was concerned, in May of 2024. We're also hearing that one of the earlier runaway attempts that you mentioned in either January or February of 2024, reportedly her family or a family friend sent communication to David Burke's manager trying to locate Celeste and provided to the manager an image of one of the many missing posters that was created by the family on behalf of Celeste. And again, reportedly, after that communication between the family and the manager, Celeste returned home within a day. So it seems like at least some of these runaway efforts were efforts to meet with David.
I'm going to talk about that manager in a minute because he apparently spoke out on social media after being accused of being allegedly involved in what happened to Celeste. He's been fighting back hard against that. I'll get to that in a second. The LA captain statement I thought was interesting for a number of different reasons, trying to establish what they know and don't know. They've been quite tight-lipped. Authorities have been quite tight-lipped. But even suggesting we're not sure that there's criminal liability beyond concealing the body, right, to suggest that we don't even know for sure that there's a murder, that there was a homicide, that this could have resulted from something else. Isn't that significant? I mean, that statement I thought was important.
It's very concerning, and it suggests that at least at this point, they have been unable to determine the cause of death, and that may be due to the advanced state of decomposition that is likely to have resulted from this poor child being dead in the front trunk of a vehicle in a very hot environment for, now we're hearing, maybe up to a month.
Let's talk about that, because this car was there at least now 11 days before. We don't know when the body was deposited. I would imagine it would be quite difficult to deposit a body in a car in a public area like this. There's reports that people were noticing the car being there. But that provides a timeline of when she was killed and how long she might have been in that car for, particularly when you couple that with decomposition. In the end, how accurate are authorities going to be in terms of a timeline of death?
Well, again, as you said, we don't know for sure when she was placed in the front trunk of that vehicle, but we're now hearing it could have been as far back as early August of this year or a month or so before she was discovered. That's consistent with some of the reporting that we're hearing in terms of communication Celeste was having with friends, which appear to have stopped sometime in late July or the early part of August of this year. So it is quite likely that that is when this child's life ended. The fact that she's been reported as weighing only 70-something pounds upon her autopsy, I think is significant. This is a child, again, according to the missing posters, that weighed about 120 pounds or more when alive. So that suggests that she's been deceased for a while, and that significant decomposition occurred before she was found.
One other thing, I think when we first started covering this case, there was an understanding that maybe that car was only there for a few days. And one of the scenarios that we came up with, well, perhaps whoever did this, they didn't have enough time to take that next step, moving the car, doing something with the body. But if now we're listening to this and that car was there for a prolonged period of time, doesn't that tell you something? Whether it's they wanted the car to be found, whether they wanted it there, whether or not they had the ability to get to it in time. But if the car was there for a prolonged period of time, doesn't that tell you something else about who may have done this, or maybe not who may have done this, but what the motivations or the actions were of the person who put her body in the car?
Well, what it does suggest is that the car was abandoned in this Los Angeles neighborhood at about the same time that David Burke's tour schedule would have made him.
Yeah, let me add that, because CNN reported that he began his tour in early August, was even set to go overseas to Europe next month. That's been canceled. It was interesting because TMZ reported that he had a San Francisco show at the end of July, with the official tour starting reportedly August 5th in Del Mar. So there, I think, is the timeline there. Talk to us about it.
Well, again, those early tour dates were all in West Coast cities, in places where he could presumably get back to Los Angeles without a great deal of trouble. It's about August 15th, and for a couple of weeks after that, that he's pretty solidly in the eastern part of the U.S., in Canada, and I think one or two Midwest states. All of those locations with pretty much back-to-back tours, that is, pretty much every night, would make it very difficult for David Burke to return to the Los Angeles area. So I don't know if there was any intention to have the vehicle or the body discovered, but it seems like from about August 15th forward, it would have been very difficult for David Burke to return to Los Angeles for any reason, including to move his car.
By the way, I was going to ask you this. As we're trying to track her movements, as we're trying to understand a timeline, how tough is it to do that, and how much is it complicated by her age? We're talking about a 13, 14-year-old girl, only so much she could do on her own, right, as opposed to, you know, let's say a 25-year-old. When you were trying to track her movements, does that complicate it for investigators?
It may, in the sense that, as you said, she's a child. She doesn't have all the sort of trappings of adulthood around her. Quite frankly, it seems like whatever trappings she had were probably provided to her by adults who were abetting and enabling this behavior. It's been reported that she had, for example, fake IDs. That's not something that a seventh grader from Lake Elsinore gets on her own. She didn't have a job. She didn't have money. She could not on her own get a fake ID that would fool a Hollywood nightclub doorman. So yes, you're right. She doesn't have a lot of the trappings of adulthood, but it's almost certain that she's got a phone. And a phone is maybe the easiest way to create a historical record of somebody's movements.
You want to go back to the manager. So this is being reported by LA Magazine that David's manager, Josh Marshall, has gone on the defensive on TikTok after people have accused him of being involved with what happened to Celeste. So apparently, after a private investigator came out and said that there is this, and you referred to it before, this 2024 email that people had told Marshall that Celeste disappeared and was with David, that he never responded to that email. The manager never responded to the email. Now, Celeste apparently did return the next day, but again, it seems this has led people to make accusations, with an account believed to be Marshall responding online to all of this. How dare you say something like this with no facts? He elaborated further in a detailed statement. This has been a tough time for my family, as I am a father of 3 children. I receive no emails and I'm no one's roommate. I live full-time at home with my wife and kids. My daughter is 14 and this news is affecting so many lives. I never received any emails. I had zero knowledge of anything, and I don't live in California. Also, I work remotely 95% of the time, and my job doesn't require me to have much interaction with any of my clients / David, as there are many others that work with him on a day-to-day capacity, not me. This news is tragic for so many and for her family. I hope the proper authorities get to the bottom of it soon. Let me remind people, a lot of this is speculation and alleged. In the meantime, I am with my family, helping them emotionally get through the news of this tragedy. Please report on factual information. And regarding whether he ever drives a Tesla, I have no cars registered in my name in California, nor have any of my cars been in that state. Please use facts with supporting evidence when making comments. What are your thoughts on that statement? And also just generally, how much can the public help or hurt an investigation?
Those are really important questions. The manager is certainly correct that there's a lot of reporting in this case that is unverified. So much of the information on this case is circulating on social media and on sites that do not engage in rigorous fact-checking. That said, as this case has drawn more attention, there is more reporting now from institutions like the LA Times, like NBC, that do engage in pretty rigorous fact-checking and make a point of verifying information before they publish it. As to what he knew and when he knew it and whether or not he received this communication, that's exactly why search warrants exist. And I imagine that in addition to the search warrant on the residence that's been widely reported, that the LAPD has done search warrants to telecommunication companies, to internet service providers, to social media companies, to try to follow the electronic trail in this case.
We're going to stay on top of it. We're going to continue to follow it, see what happens. Matt Irvine, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.